Uh, Good evening, everybody. Great to be a part of this mega event. Uh, we'll straight away go to the panel discussions. I have with me Dr. Chengappa, Vice Chancellor, ex-Vice Chancellor of University of Agriculture Science, Bangalore. I have Shivkumar from Nimbus Wireless, and Vinay from Ecogen. Uh, Each one of us would be speaking for about 7 to 8 minutes, followed by questions. We'll take the questions. Let me straight away go to my presentation part because he asked me that I should inform the House about what NABARD's activities relating to IoT is there. In the afternoon, our Deputy Managing Director has already briefed you about the activities of NABARD. I'd not like to repeat. There could be, as far as possible, I would avoid all the repetitions which have been made by the previous speakers. He told you about our credit functions. Now I'd just like to brief you on our promotional activities. First and foremost, which is related, is the formation and financing of producers organization. One thing that I think most of us are remembering right from 230 is that 9.1 and 70%. 2050, 9.1 billion, and to feed the 9.1 billion people, our production has to increase by 70%. If that has to happen, I feel that there will be two game changers. One definitely is the IoT-based agriculture. The other one which immediately is required is the farmers collectives, farmers producer organization. So the challenge for us is to make the agriculture viable, and a lot of small farmers are suffering because of the non-viability. So to take advantage of the economy of scale, the farmers producer organizations are a must. During 2014-15, the government of India has given us a fund of 200 crores to promote 2,000 farmers producer organizations. See, it is just the 2,000 FUOs throughout the country to begin with. But if you ask what is the potential, I would say it is 6 lakhs. 6 lakh villages, one farmers producer organization per village. Or even if you say one FUO per 2 to 3 villages, still the number is a huge 3 lakhs. And I would suggest that for most of our interventions which you are thinking about, if your touch point is going to be FUO, you will be more effective. The scales would work in favor of you. One of the pride model which Srini didn't come from TCS, it's all based, his entire model is based on the farmers producer organization, the advisory at the specific location for the specific farmer, specific activities. All that is possible if farmers producer organizations are encouraged. And that part will be taken care by us and other resource supporting agencies. So my request would be to think about FEOs once you are trying to introduce your products. Then other important intervention that we are doing is for action research. This is mainly for bringing technology from lab to land or any improvements in our credit delivery system. The best example I can give is for the tissue culture, which we encouraged by assisting the tissue culture scientists. Another best I could tell you about is the self-help group. The entire self-help group movement, which in the morning we're doing, the largest movement in the world, self-help group, the largest empowerment program for the women in the world. Self-help group, started with our action research project. We also have for rural innovations, we do support rural innovations. IoT related, I would say we have supported one Jayalakshmi Agro Enterprises, mobile-based application. We started last year. Now I think he has around 40,000 to 50,000 farmers, and the numbers are increasing by the day. So he's giving the mobile-based crop advisory, that the good agronomic practices right from soil till the harvesting. And he's also into analytics, which I'm not going to talk in detail now. Another one is that we have been identified as a implementing entity for the green climate. So climate changes for certain, please don't ask for statistical evidences. It is happening, it is for real, you know what is happening in and around. Here, particularly, I would say that we could support for adaptation and mitigation. We have from Ecogen who is, would be speaking to us about the solar pump sets and also the micro cold storages. So what we are thinking is just an idea, it's a broad idea which has struck us. Supposing along with the solar pump set, you get into micro irrigation with the sensors, right? And then you're able to provide the whole solution right from the availability of water, the right kind of right quantity. Then you link them up to your cold storages for small farmers. So we can, if something is there, we can think about. It's just a broad idea which I'm giving you. We could think about that. So I think before giving a background of agriculture value chain, I think many things have been discussed about the status of agriculture. The 48% dependent on direct agriculture for livelihood. If you take other subsidiary people who are dependent on subsidiary activities, again around 60% of the population is dependent on agriculture. Nothing different from what we heard when we were children. 60-70% dependent on agriculture. Same thing is continuing. Only thing is the contribution of agriculture to the overall GDP, which was 52% earlier, has now come down to 17%. It's a good thing. All developed economies, the contribution of agriculture in the total GDP is less than 10%. Some are below 5%. But the only problem for us is that the population dependent on agriculture remains the same. So right from afternoon, we have been hearing speakers telling about 85% of the farm land holdings are small farmers. It is an average Indian farmer, his total income, expenditure, and then you just imagine. What is left for him for investment? See, somebody in the afternoon they are talking about the suicides in Karnataka this year. Till date, around 800 farmers have committed suicide from April onwards. So on an average, daily 2 to 3 farmers are committing suicide. It would be painful to read again tomorrow in the newspaper, again 1 or 2 farmers committing suicide. We did conduct a fact-finding study of this entire thing based on the request made by Karnataka government. What brought out things clearly is that not all that is credit related. If credit was really, credit is no doubt one of the functions of production. It is not the function of production. If that was so, we cannot explain. Over the last 10 years, the credit to farm sector, agriculture, has increased from 80,000 crores to 8.4 lakh crores. That means 10 times increase in the credit flow during the last 10 years. What has happened to our production? It's more or less same. It must have just increased by 5 or 10%. If it was to just double, we would have made wonders. I'm not saying 10% increase in credit, let it be 10 times increase in, no, it's not happening. There are other things which are very relevant why the viability of Indian agriculture is suffering. It's all technology related, it is extension related, it's market related. So in a way, if you think of enhancing the income of farmers, we need to bring him in a sustainable supply chain model. By that, what I mean is, this is a typical supply chain, I have to say. One is the production. One is a production zone where all the simplified agriculture chain is there for inputs. I would have just missed insurance, which also can be part of that. The production zone, where right from organized markets, the local traders, and then the value-added zone. You may also ask me now, could you have said, when I was talking about suicides, whether we could have saved some lives? Yes, definitely we could have saved some lives. Had we made them part of any of the farmers producer organization, had we made them part of this value chain, or if had you given them sufficient hints about the weather forecasting, had you told them about the arrivals and likely arrivals based on this is all based on computing, likely arrivals of each crop, how much to, when should you have gone for the planting, all those things definitely could have saved some of the lives. Good. This is a dairy model of I'm now talking about into financials also. For agriculture, there are different activities, different models. Well, in the entire supply chain and the value chain, they keep changing. The links keep changing, the number keep changing depending upon the product. Larger the number of links, lesser is the pie that goes to the farmer, the producer. And equally it pinches the consumer. In this value chain of dairy, the farmer identifies the animal, goes to the banker sends a veterinarian, and immediately the picture of the animal is sent along with the insurance. The insurance is available, the bank releases the money. Then it is this supply chain, he is either giving to the cooperative society, if it is a cooperative milk society, or if it is promoted by a private enterprise, it will be a private agent who will be collecting it. Then the company collects the milk, they process it, payment is made to the bank. They also get the extension support, mobile based. Our DMD was mentioning about the chip in the plant. In each plant which can, you know how much moisture is there, what is to be applied. Animals also we can do that. In a chip based on the respiration, we can identify the sick animals, which can be again removed from the entire herd. Of course, this is being done in the West. Maybe it will take some more time, or it requires a large dairy farmer to adopt these technologies. These are just some of our suggestions for improving the value chain or the supply chain. Improvements in the delivery of inputs, automation of the loan, insurance processing, which takes a sizable time now for the farmer. Better credit rating and credit worthiness, depending upon the so. And most importantly, the reduction in the cost of input components. This again through aggregation of input demands. And we're talking of seamless bank, farmer, and input agency tie-up. A reduction in number of actors in the value chain. See, instead of the traditional system where the farmer has to depend upon a commission agent to the trader, trader to the wholesaler, wholesaler back to the retailer, and retailer to the consumer. This, if we can reduce the number of actors, now I can say directly the farmer sells to the retail, organized retails, thereby reducing most of your other actors in the chain. Then he gets a better value, even the purchaser also is able to procure at a cheaper rate. The ultimate consumer also he gets benefits. Creating opportunities over spatial and time horizon. Again, this is now at least Karnataka has amended the APMC Act. Farmer from Karnataka can do online trading across the country. It is still possible. And when I'm talking of time horizon, I'm talking of the farmer keeping the produce in the warehouses. Over time, when he knows the rates are better, he is able to sell the produce. That's also possible, and that should be attempted. Of course, integration of market intelligence, no need to stress on that. My only other suggestion is like what Mr. Nataraj Kundgoda was saying. As far as possible, if the cost burden is shifted to the supplier of inputs or other players in the chain, it would benefit the farmers. No doubt, there are certain things where the farmer has to bear, but as far as possible, if it is, please think about that and let's help the farmer. Just last Saturday, I read in the newspaper saying that they're just comparing our per capita income and South Korea. About 50 years back, both were same. Now they are 18 times more than ours. One of the reasons they said is the ICT Development Index. I'd be happy if I am proved wrong. They said that it is one of the, South Korea is on the top amongst the 160 countries. India is 131. I was really surprised. With now, one good thing is that with these kind of activities now taking place, with a lot of stock of intellectual that we have in the country, I think they will not be far off and will be one amongst the top. With that hope, I would just close this, and one or two questions I can take. Then I'd, shall I go to Dr. Chengappa. Actually, he was such a versatile person. He was to be in the other panel. Since Srini from TCS didn't turn up, he just...
I'll move there. Mr. Chairman of the session, the other panelists and my dear friends. Friends, I think, we have heard a very absorbing presentation of the technology that could be used as a part of the smart agriculture or the precision agriculture. I just want to mention here, for example, technology is a ever evolving process, and the technologies has to be evolved because, in India, in most crops we have reached the yield stagnation, and also other side is the cost of production has gone very high, and in many commodities we are not competitive. Even if you want to sell wheat today, you have to sell, we are export wheat, we have to export at a subsidized price because our costs are very high, our MSP is very high, so on and so forth, because MSP is based on the cost of production or the C cost, what we use. So the efficient use of scarce inputs, which we talked in the supply chain, what we talked in the just 2 hours back with some of the good presentation, one thing you have to remember, technology development, technology validation, and technology transfer has to be seen together. So many technologies are there, still they lie in the laboratories. So when we develop technologies, we must see how this technology could be taken to the farmers. Technologies are scale neutral, but all cannot make use of the technology because of many other reasons, social, political, and economic, and many things come in. So when we talk about technology, please keep this in mind. There are so many technologies which remain and they will never reach the farmers. So keep this in mind, because this is the India, in agriculture is not, we are not talking, an agriculture as a business. Agriculture has to be talked as a business, and these technologies are required, and we should move in this direction. But please include technology transfer, because we have seen if there is a good technology, even a small farmer comes with the technology. We have seen among the technology, the seed is the most sought after by the farmer. See, I've seen an instance where the hybrid seed produced by the Indo-American seed, people were standing in the queue to get 100 grams of seed. This is what very important technology, because there are umpteen number of technologies. Technology development is very, very important, my dear friends. Of course, we also talked about the optimum use of the scarce inputs to achieve or maximize production. This is a typical production function where we have to maximize the yield by using the scarce resources. Certainly, this optimality criteria has to be applied. I appreciate that. We need more of this kind of models, but these models should be scalable. It should be scalable and it should be adopted, because adoption is a very crucial. The best of the technology we have seen, the adoption curve. At best of the adoption, the best we see is around 80% in seeds. And for example, we were advocating the simple technology of laser leveling. The farmers were not convinced. We were trying to convince the farmers, saying that with laser leveling, you can, optimize the use of water, optimize the nutrients, so that the cost of production can be brought down. Well, it's the zero tillage technology which has spread in the Indo-Gangetic plain. It took years. The technology has to be really thought in that sense. The farmers should get the maximum benefit out of it, and they immediately see the tangible benefits. They don't see the intangible benefits. So keep in mind, we have to keep that. The second, I just mentioned about the technology part. But when we talk about the technology, I just want to put the next slide. One slide only I'll show you. Put the next slide, please, or you can put it here. For example, friends, we do. Next slide. Yeah. Well, friends, I just want to indicate what is happening in the Indian agriculture. Let's have the reality. For example, if you look at the per capita consumption, monthly per capita, this is the latest I can quote for the National Sample Survey Organization, which collects data for more than 1 lakh households. What's happening to the consumption pattern in India? The per capita consumption of cereals is coming down. The per capita consumption of the high value commodities like milk products, meat, fish, etc. is going up. So let's wake up. In order to move from food security to nutritional security, we will have to talk in this. What I just want to mention is, let's not only concentrate on crops. Livestock and others are becoming more important. And a farmer doesn't have only crops. We'll have to look from a whole farm. When you are talking about the supply chain issues or the technology, treat the farm as well. Don't bother too much about small farmers. We say less than 1 hectare, but he has animals, he has others, which make the farm much bigger. We only think, how much of crop can be produced by an acre of land. But that's why the integrated farming system, integrating farming solutions, using this is more apt. Don't simply concentrate on only crops. We have been doing it. The universities, I admit my mistake. We do a lot of research on cereals, pulses. We thought food security is important, but we are moving towards nutrition security. So think about whole farm kind of things, my dear friends. Now, of course, when we saw even the very good technologies kind of this that can be trained in the Indian context, though even among the small farmers, I am convinced we can try, but still I find this kind of value chain, what we use, highly fragmented, cross specific, location specific, and we need to have end-to-end solutions, or end-to-end kind of this thing. And I really appreciate that we are moving towards that. Even the value chain analysis given by the NABARD is also quite good. And also, one thing I'll tell you, friends, produce. We have been concentrating from the green revolution, produce, and we have reached a stage of flourishing. Unless we think of market solutions, you cannot, you will be nowhere. So certainly, in IoT application, I have seen umpteen number of cases where I have traveled immensely worked with the farmers. They say, we produce and do what? No, unless you link market technologies with this kind of technologies, this will not move forward. Now, this is the biggest problem we have. We don't have end-to-end solutions. When we did this, please think end-to-end solution. We also in the universities, we have our own shortcomings. There are, well, friends, in this kind of, I don't want to point out anywhere, but in this supply chain we saw, we talk about, agricultural input providers or the agricultural, people who are involved in agricultural input suppliers or the companies. Well, that is an important source of extension point. NSS was as indicated. But in fact, I would say digital upscaling of them is more important, because I have seen more in my own assessment of them is, you go to a input dealer, he sells the pesticides or fertilizers where his margin is very high. So what are you talking about optimizing the kind of input that's being used? This is shown beyond certain level. Where is his margin? He is a good businessman, I would say. If his margin is high, he will sell. Otherwise, he will keep those good pesticides down. Now, this is let us don't depend upon too much as only one actor, because in the value chain many other actors are involved. Mix of everybody, put too much emphasis on one who is not a very efficient and competent player in my opinion. He is one of the players in the value chain. Good, he has a very good link. In fact, in an interlocked market situation, farmers depend on him too much, but his role is also limited, and his digital knowledge is also very limited. His domain knowledge is very, very poor. He doesn't know what is a contact pesticide, what is a contact insecticide, or what you call any other kind of insect. Now, let's talk about the value chain, where we want to optimize. Their upgrading their knowledge is also very important. Digitalize them more, so that when farmers go to them for solutions, so that you will provide good solutions. That's a word of caution. And also, friends, I harp on the point again on the investment part, and also the smart agriculture, or we use synonymously smart agriculture, precision agriculture. They are not the same, but they are in the same wavelength, but they are not exactly same. But we are talking about the investment part in this kind of smart agriculture, and how the small farmers can be made of this kind of a supply chain. Now, my own experience is, let us face the reality. For example, few years back, micro irrigation was not there. Now micro irrigation there. Why? Because a lot of support is given by the government. And if you really want to move towards this kind of digital based supply chain, etc., we must move. For example, that has taken off, and bring in fertigation, bring in sensors to use optimally the water, etc., etc.
Doctor, one more minute.
Yeah, I'll course. So that's for any friends. I do not want to go much. I just want to say that this is very important. Then the compression of the chain, too many actors also is not good, and either in the production or the marketing, which Gandhi mentioned, compression of the chain is very important. And in this direction, we have a lot of good experience of integrators, eChoupal, and all these models, but they are only segment based. This is where we fail. And let's see a holistic approach. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yes, I'm ready to answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful insight. Two questions.
Please.
First is, you talked about us being uncompetitive in our production.
Uncompetitive?
You said compared to international prices, Indian farmers
Yes,
produce
many commodities, take the sugar.
Yeah, we are very high priced. You
Yes.
mentioned that. Could you tell us what we would need to do? Where are we deficient, in about 2 or 3 sentences? And the second question is, how do you price water? Water seems to be a very important and costly input, but it isn't costed in our MSP, yet our MSP is high. How do you explain that?
For example, I'll answer the first question, pricing of water. It is a highly debatable issue and a very controversial issue. It can be priced by a consumptive use of water. You can price it, but it depends upon the government, because most of these waters supplied by the canal, etc., is priced by the government. So optimal pricing can never take place in this political situation, right? Now, I don't know whether I'm partially answering your question, because there are a lot of studies. The first one you have shown, for example, for most of the crops, what has happened is we have lived with this MSP regime since 1964. We started the Commission on Costs and Prices. Simultaneously, the Food Corporation came, the procurement took place. Our cost of production is also going very high, because the major problem is our yields are much low, as indicated by others. This is where technology. The second is also our pricing is also not that based on a sort of a competitive kind of pricing, because these are all government intervention pricing. That's why, see, for example, you have seen we produce 265 million tons of food grains, out of which about 80 million tons is purchased by the Food Corporation of India as buffer stock, and another about 40 million tons is consumed by the producers, and what's left in the free market is very less. So what happens is, if you really want to export, you are not competitive. Many commodities, wheat is one, sugar is one, only rice we are very competitive because of basmati, and our value chain is, very competitive globally. Today we are exporting 10 million tons of rice. Because we are globally competitive. I don't know whether I answered it fully, but this is the reality.
Yeah. So,
Interesting discussion all afternoon. I see one disturbing trend that I see, that I see as a broad brush. Everyone talks about use technology. We saw drones and hyperspectral cameras and all that, and say charge the guys who are supplying fertilizers. Whereas the rest of the world is saying, don't go fertilizers. You know,
Don't
go
go
organic. Go organic, or go, you know, reduce the amount of fertilizers that are being used and such, right? So who is going to pay for it then, at the end of the day? And the other part that I see is everyone complains about small fields, right? Small farms in India. And we are associating a drone, a big camera, and saying, you know, just to make it worthwhile, the drone better, you know, fly for 20 minutes before, you know, someone can pay for it. If you were to take a balloon and fly 100 meters up on a small field, take all the images that you want, come back down and tell the farmer, we think you have a problem compared to your next guy. There is tremendous value there, and that fits into this IoT concept as well, because that's limited amount of data, it's cheap, and it can be done. It's being done by universities worldwide. No one is talking about that in India.
You can be brief in your question. Known things, let us, we can discuss
I
later
think we
on.
can discuss
If you have a
over
query,
the
please
Okay.
put it.
I join with you.
You can, okay, I think,
Yeah.
Doctor, you can.
Yeah, I know what I said.
Can I now request Vinay, please?
Let me get the slides back. Okay, thanks. So I'll try to be brief, just a couple slides to give you guys an idea of who we are and I guess why we are over here today. So let me see. Okay, so the first question is what we do, Ecozen Solutions. Broadly, we have two verticals. The first one is we develop solar micro cold storages. So these are 20 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet containers that we install across the country. So it's a cold storage in the traditional sense. It can maintain somewhere between 2 to 20 degrees centigrade, a humidity of anywhere above 40%, all of which is actively controlled. We can control those parameters actively. And it's portable. You can move it from place to place. And it is supposed to be off-grid. So there is really no need for a grid connection. The solar panels placed on top of the cold storage is what powers the entire unit. So it's for a small farmer. So it can store 5 metric tons of produce, 4 to 6, really depending on the produce that is being stored. So it's for a small farmer to kind of put it in his field and use it as and when needed, right after harvest if he has to wait for a good price point in the market, or maybe if there is wastage and if he has to save it against it. Traders and other third parties in the value chain use it as well. All right. The second vertical which we do is a solar pump controller. So like Mr. Genigi pointed out before, we try to cover both the pre-harvest solutions and the post-harvest. So what a farmer would probably use initially is the pump controller to irrigate his field, and that's again solar powered. And then later on, he can use the cold storage. We have provisions to have the same set of power plant, which is the solar panel on the top, to switch between both. So because the chances are high that he's going to use one or the other at the given time, he might not be using both. So these are broadly the two product verticals that we develop. So that is what we do. The next question which I would probably like to take is why we are here, right? So this is a Internet of Things forum. So what am I doing here? All our products are online. So we monitor close to 50 different parameters of all the products that we have installed across the country. So parameters like voltage, temperature, humidity, how long the sun was there today, the pressure of the refrigerant, a variety of different parameters. And this is really critical to our business operation. So people over here have been talking about the value of IoT. What I would like to say is this has been very critical for us because it helps us monitor the health of the unit and control it. So I don't know if you guys realize the risk a farmer is placed by putting about 5 tons of his produce in a cold storage. So if the unit fails, that's about 2 to 3 lakh worth of produce. It's probably his entire revenue for the whole year. So in one season, he harvests all his produce and then he puts it in a cold storage. If the unit fails, he loses 2 or 3 lakhs, which is probably his entire revenue for the year. Okay, so the risk that a farmer is placing himself in by putting his produce in a cold storage is pretty high. So it's very critical for us that we monitor the health of the unit and make sure that it's fully functional at any given point of time. So we get 50 parameters every 90 seconds. So we make sure that the unit is operational completely, and we provide a 36-hour backup designed in such a way that if a unit fails, we would be able to send someone to service it before the crop goes spoiled. So that is where the 24 to 36-hour number comes from. And this has been very critical for us because we install in very remote areas. So like 4 hours north of Shimla, somewhere in Chhattisgarh, various remote areas and farms like that. And we have a pretty good testing setup back in Pune, which is where we are based in, and we test our electronics and all. But really, you'd be surprised at the different failure modes that you wouldn't have thought of. So recently, we went and one of our units in Raipur wasn't functioning. So we being engineers, we sit and started brainstorming, maybe it overheated and all that. But then a person went there, he opened the electronics box, and there was a small frog. That was the reason why the unit failed. And we didn't think about that. So in all our designs and tests and everything, we hadn't accounted for a fact that somehow a small frog would creep inside and short circuit our unit. So this is very critical for us. The monitoring remotely is very critical for us. The second one is predictive maintenance and analysis. So monitoring health is how the system is doing today. With all the parameters that we get, we are also developing algorithms that would help us predict. Like 3 weeks from now, something might not function. The battery is slowly, getting bad. The refrigerant pressure is going down. These kinds of things are, not something that will immediately cause an effect, but you can see a prolonged effect over time. The second thing that we are using with all the data that we get via the internet is predictive maintenance and analytics. All right. The final point is feedback for design. So when we get all this data, we get the kind of crop that a customer is storing, how many times he's opening and closing the door, what the weight of the crop is he moving it around. We got all these information. And using that, we try to make sure that our design is more robust. We can reduce the cost. Really, if no one is getting it below 5 degrees, we don't have to design it for 2 degrees. If we do it for 5, and we can pass on the savings to the customer, right? So the way we design our systems is by analyzing all this data and see how we can bring down the costs. Because this is a small farmer, and there is still a lot of room both in our design to reduce the cost. And these are the kind of parameters that we use to see where else we can cut corners and how do we make a robust product which addresses the customer's requirements. At the same time, it's not too expensive to the point where he cannot afford. So really, these are the 3 different broad things that we use IoT for, where we collect all the data and then we monitor them. So that's just a brief introduction I want. Good.
Questions on the sidelines?
Good evening, everyone. Siva Kumar from Nimble Wireless. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a throat infection. I think all through the day we heard a lot about how technology can be used in agriculture for all the way from seeding, irrigating, fertilizing to harvesting. But there is a bigger problem post-harvest. And I want to present you some statistics very quickly. In India, about 1/3 of the children are malnourished. 1/3 of the people live below poverty line, right? Less than 61% of people get vaccinated, or children get vaccinated. So you would think that food and vaccines should be, preserved very carefully and not wasted. But yet, what we see here is $2 billion worth of vegetables and fruits are wasted every year. Every year, $2 billion worth of fruits and vegetables. 1/3 of the dairy products get wasted. 40% of vaccines never reach the children, okay? So we dug into this problem, and what we found was there were 2 key factors contributing to this huge wastage. The first one was lack of cold chain infrastructure. And by cold chain infrastructure, part of which is what Vinay talked about as a micro cold storage, is the ability to store, transport, and sell temperature-sensitive goods, right? Temperature-sensitive food like, vegetables, dairy, cheese, butter, even meat, pharma, vaccines, medicines, right? So there was, while the food industry and the consumption rate were growing phenomenally, the cold chain infrastructure did not keep pace. The second problem was, even when there was cold chain infrastructure available, frequent power outages and lack of real-time monitoring of the temperature of the cold chain infrastructure was leading to about 20 to 25% of wastage. So we don't have enough cold chain infrastructure in the country, and even for the ones that have it, we we have about 25–30% of wastage. And that is where we thought we could add some, provide a solution. And so what we do is we provide an industrial IoT solution, an end-to-end IoT solution for cold chain monitoring. That's one of our business units. We do a few other things, but our prime focus is to provide an end-to-end business solution for cold chain monitoring. So any temperature sensitive goods, food, pharma, vegetables, fruits, all the way from production, where it needs to be stored, transported, even all the way to the retail store where it is being sold, we provide a solution. And how do we deploy the solution is we have smart wireless sensors connected to the cloud that monitor temperature, humidity, and a few other critical parameters, send the data to the cloud, and from the cloud we provide a mobile and a web app that allows the companies, food companies, pharma companies, or logistics companies that serve to food and pharma to be effectively monitor the real-time status of the temperature and humidity, set alerts, and take action before things go out of control. That's exactly what we do. So in a nutshell, what we do is we provide business-critical assets monitoring solution for food and pharma and logistics companies. So that in a nutshell is what we do. So I'll stop here in the interest of time and open up for questions. Thank you.
Well done, well done.
We have time for questions.
Yeah, as a chairman, critical questions.
Yeah. Let it be brief. Questions should be brief.
Right. So we can chat offline. I'll give you the price. Yeah. Right. So we have a few different financial models. Some 3 to be precise. One is where a customer buys it outright, and we have a few of those. 2 is where it's pay as you go. So you probably pay a portion of it, and we have some financial backing to give it you, and then you pay as you make profits in the unit. 3 is where we collaborate with maybe organizations like NABARD, and then we provide it on a loan kind of basis. We are exploring a leasing model as well, where we would lease it for you till you use it, and then we can take it back. But yeah, we have a few pilot studies of that. That's something which hasn't been very formalized yet. But so yeah.
You are not answered fully.
More question.
Yeah, would it make sense to make that platform revolving so that it chases the sun rays?
So from the way we position it is facing south. So since India is in, sorry? Okay, it's a suggestion, not a question. All right. Okay.
Anyone else? All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's been an interesting session, and I must thank Dr. Channagappa for a last moment adjustment. We have had some challenges. Some of our panelists were in Chennai and couldn't travel and all that. What I would like to suggest is for most of you, I'd request you to stay on. There is a coffee break, and join the session at 6. As a part of the IoT thing, there is a lot of issues about difficulty to make, etc. But there are some world-class companies coming out of India where there is dominant investment. For example, there's a company which owns more than 30% of the V2V, the auto network standards out of Europe, invested by GM China here. There's another company which is the Google X Prize space. So there's world-class companies coming out of India despite all the restrictions, and none of them needed government help. So there's a lot of optimism, and I would like you to come on and stay from 6 to 8. We will discuss that, and then we will discuss how to grow the ecosystem. But in the meanwhile, let me thank the panelists. So Ganagi, you can